Hey everybody, Dylan here from the Tech Dork Times, and this is our review of Marvel's Avengers. But if we're just meeting for the first time, then my name's Dylan, and I want to welcome you to the Tech Dork Times, a place for dorks from all walks of life to celebrate the world of gaming, tech, and all things awesome. Thank you so much for stopping by, and let's get into the video. So like always, there are timestamps in the description to this video, so if you want to jump to a specific section of this review, no hard feelings, click the links in the description and it'll take you to what you want to hear about. But before we get into the actual review, I just want to give everyone an indication of where I am in the game. So I've been playing for at least 30 hours. I have Thor up to almost max power level of 150, and Ms. Marvel's very close behind. I think she's at like 136 or 137 of a possible 150. So I have been leveling characters a lot in the endgame. I've played through the entire campaign, and I am starting to feel a little bit burnt out by the game and the overall gameplay loop. And the only reason I bring that up before we get into the review is that I was such a huge fanboy of this game going into it, and as I started playing it, I absolutely fell in love with it. But now that I'm hitting this sort of burnout phase, I feel like I'm in a really good place to actually review this without looking back on it with rose-colored glasses, if that makes sense. So I want to start this review off talking about the one piece of this game that surprised me more than anything else, and maybe this won't be surprising to you guys because everyone's talking about this, but the story blew me away. The campaign, it's only like 10 hours long, and it's basically just an overly long tutorial introducing you to everything you need to know for the end game, but the actual story that's taking place, the voice acting, the character work, everything is amazing. You've also got some of the best voice actors in the industry, Troy Baker, Nolan North, and there's probably a ton more in the game, just doing a fantastic job of bringing these characters to life. And just so everyone knows, the story centers around Kamala Khan. She's like this massive fangirl of the Avengers, and it's her story, really, and it only works because of her. She's fantastically acted. Her whole character arc is awesome, just watching her go from this outcast to an actual full-blown superhero. And the story revolves around her bringing the Avengers back together so they can unite and take on the big bad of this game, who is, I probably shouldn't say who because I don't want to spoil anything, but it's an awesome big bad, and the whole climax, the entire story is just told so well. Although this isn't fully story related, I will say too that the actual gameplay in the story campaign is so satisfying, and the way that they use all of the different Avengers is so fun, and the finale, you get to play as all of them in this set piece driven climax. It's great. So yeah, I'm not going to say anything more about the finale, but just know that it is totally awesome, and the way that everything comes together is really, really satisfying, and it sets you up to be very excited for the endgame loop, which is what we're going to talk about next. So talk about a segue. But before we jump ahead, just know that the story is super satisfying, surprisingly so, especially in a game that focuses heavily on the endgame loot grind. There was no reason for the campaign to be this good, but they did it, they pulled it off, and it was awesome. Okay, so that's great that the campaign is awesome, 9 out of 10, maybe even 10 out of 10, depending on how much you love the Avengers. This game absolutely will live and die by how fun the combat is, and I'm really happy to say that I've very much enjoyed the combat so far. Every character feels distinct, and that's really saying something considering that the button mapping for every character is identical. Your left trigger aims your ranged attack, your right trigger throws your ranged, X and Y are your light and heavy attack respectively, dodge is B, A is like your jump / traversal mechanic thing. On paper, every character plays identically, but the way that the devs have made each character feel so distinct is actually really impressive. Not only that, but each character levels up and gets skill points that you can put into new abilities or upgrade your existing ones, and those things drastically change the way you play the game. So much so that by the end of the game, when you get to like max hero level, your character is playing completely differently from when you first started with them. And your progression is tied to each specific character, meaning that if you get to power level 150 with Ms. Marvel, that does not carry over to Black Widow or Iron Man or any of the other heroes. So you have a separate grind for each hero as you make your way through the endgame. So I think it's also important to talk about the setup and the general loop of the Avengers Initiative, which is the endgame content of this game. So basically, once you beat the campaign, you are dropped into the helicarrier, which is like your base of operations, and you have access to this huge war table where you can choose all kinds of missions to complete, and you get better gear, you get resources, all kinds of stuff to help you move up the ranks and get stronger with each individual character. So Marvel's Avengers shares a lot of the same DNA as games like Warframe, Destiny, Diablo. It's very much a looter shooter once you get into the end game, which doesn't sound like it should work, but I will say that that grind has become very addictive to me. As I said at the beginning of this video, there is a bit of a caveat to that, which is I am starting to feel a bit burnt out by that loop, and I think it's because I'm missing an end game goal to keep me moving forward. So now that I'm at max gear level for Miss Marvel and Thor, all that's left to do is upgrade that gear to the very max level possible. And that requires farming a bunch of resources and doing a bunch of missions to get those resources, and it's just a big grind at this point. And to clarify that, what I mean is the developers have teased a bunch of endgame content like raids and dungeons, these mega hives, which sound like they're like endless dungeons where you just keep going deeper and deeper down the levels of this hive until you die, basically. So you're gearing up to be as strong as you possibly can be to see how far you can go. That sounds like an awesome endgame activity, but it's currently missing from the game. So right now, the only thing you're doing is maxing out your characters just for the sake of maxing them out. Honestly, I think that's the biggest issue with this game right now, is that unfinished feeling, that feeling of, wow, this could be really great, but it's just missing something right now. And that's frustrating for me, but hopefully helpful to you in deciding whether or not you want to buy this game. The last thing I want to talk about are microtransactions in the game, because when this game first was being released, was in beta, people had a lot of issues with the way that the developers were releasing a $60 game and then trying to charge you for every single thing in the game, which did sound really bad at the time. But as I played the game more and I've learned a bit more about how the battle passes in this game work, I've come to realize that there really isn't anything to worry about as far as microtransactions. There are definitely issues with this game, but microtransactions aren't one that I have, at least. Everything in the game can be earned just by grinding, and that grind isn't terribly difficult. For instance, the Hero Challenge card, which is this game's version of a battle pass, every character has their own Hero Challenge card, and you grind through that and earn points for that challenge card through weekly and daily challenges. And so every level on the Hero Challenge card requires 5 challenge points to unlock, and you unlock a reward with every level of your challenge card. I've been climbing through my challenge cards very easily. None of the challenges are particularly difficult. You can re-roll them if you don't like them or don't understand them. And yeah, I don't see an issue with being forced to pay to get all of the top tier challenge card stuff. It just hasn't been an issue so far. I'm only bringing that up because that seemed to be a huge criticism, and perhaps still is, but so far the grind is perfectly reasonable, and the game is fun enough that that grind doesn't feel terrible if what you're looking to move towards are all the cosmetic items and fun stuff like that. The bottom line is nothing of substance in this game is affected by microtransactions, which means there's no pay to win here. You can enjoy the game on its own merit. And also, as new heroes start to get released, there's been talks that the battle passes for those characters are going to cost 1,000 credits, which is the real money currency in this game. You can earn that by completing other hero challenge cards. So there's nothing in the game that requires real money at all. One other piece of this game that I think is really important to talk about are the technical issues. And I'm not going to spend a ton of time harping on this. I actually have a video right here if you want to watch it. 6 gameplay and technical issues that Marvel's Avengers needs to fix immediately. But I will say that the biggest issue that the game has right now that is totally unacceptable is frame rate dips when like a bunch of action and a bunch of bad guys are on the screen at the same time. To me, in a game where you're teaming up with all these Avengers and using all these crazy awesome abilities, for the frame rate to stutter like that and just kind of take you out of the experience, it's unacceptable. Especially with a AAA title like this, there's no reason that frame rates should be dipping. Also, there's a few quality of life things. For instance, inventory management is a mess, and there's no mini-map. No mini-map? I could talk about that all day, how that's crazy, but definitely check out that video. Like I said, I'll put a link in the description as well if you're interested in seeing my thoughts on the biggest issues with this game right now. I'm not really going to say anything more about technical stuff. Just know that there are quite a few technical issues with this game and quality life improvements that are desperately needed for this to be like really great. Obviously, this is a very specific game. If you really like grinding in games, you like loot, because there's a ton of loot in this game, building characters around maximizing certain skill sets. If you like superhero beat-em-ups, if you just love Marvel's Avengers in general, then maybe this game is for you. And I say maybe because it's hard to recommend this game in its current state, simply because it's very expensive, $60 to $100 depending on where you're at in the world, and it feels unfinished. And that seems unfair to suggest to anyone that you should buy this, even if it is really fun. And I do want to drive home the point that this game is really fun. So if you're okay going into it knowing that it is unfinished and you have $60, $100 to put towards it, and you just really want to play a fun game where you beat up a bunch of bad guys as a superhero and you feel badass and you get to upgrade stuff and get a bunch of gear and just keep grinding towards that end game, then do it. But just know that once you reach that end game, you're going to feel a little empty because there's nothing to do with it. Basically, the people who should buy this game are the ones who are okay knowing that this game isn't finished as it stands. But if the developers continue to add content to this and the endgame activities are actually fun and worthwhile, then this is going to be an absolute buy for anyone who likes looter shooters, grindy games, beat 'em ups. Everyone under those umbrellas should definitely buy this game once it's finished. And I do plan on making another review of this game maybe like 6 months down the line, just talking about where I think it is now, if I think it's worth playing at that point. So definitely keep an eye out for that, but right now, it's definitely a wait a little. And of course, there's a bunch of gamers who I think should just completely skip this game, even if it was in its perfect form and all of the issues were fixed. Anyone who doesn't like grindy games where you're running the same mission over and over again, you don't like managing skills and stats and all those numbers, stay far away from this game. Because even though it has the Marvel Avengers skin, it's very much a looter shooter at its heart. So if you are not into that genre, steer clear of this, because you're just going to not have fun with it. Now, one thing I would say is if you're willing to spend $60 on a 10-hour story campaign, maybe you would really enjoy it even if you don't like looter shooters. But I think 10 hours is not enough content for anyone to buy a $60 game. But that's for you to decide. That's the beauty of the Tech Dork Times. You have the freedom to do what you want. Take it. I'm giving Marvel's Avengers a 7 out of 10 for being an addictive beat 'em up with a great character-driven campaign. But even with that in mind, I can't shake the feeling that this game is unfinished, with an endgame grind that feels pointless once you hit max level with a couple of characters. But let me know what you guys are thinking in the comments below. How are you enjoying Avengers so far? Do you think the endgame has potential to be really great? Maybe you think it's already really great. I want to hear whatever you think. Let me know. That's about it for this video. I hope you enjoyed the review, and if you did, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more weekly reviews, game guides, spotlights, all that good stuff. And we're also starting a new weekly segment where we cover all of Xbox Game Pass, so we show you all the best games, hidden gems, so you can make the most of that membership service. Until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and as always, stay dorky.